Victor's got to talk about some of the connections as well.
Okay, so Tusiata and I are also cousins. Nafanua was a student of mine at the International Institute of Modern Letters at Victoria University, where I take a Māori Pasifika creative writing workshop. Gina and I are both part of the Rainbow community. Gina, I, and Tusiata are all Afakasi, i.e. mixed race, i.e. we have one brown parent and one parent that looks a lot like most of you in the audience today in some shape or form.
Nafanua, do you want to do a connection?
Kia ora. So I grew up not far from Makerita's family. You were in, was it Onipu Road in Lyle Bay? And I grew up in Rongotai Road, Kilburnie. For those of you who are Wellingtonian, you'll know how close that is. And also Makerita's mum is an art teacher, and I did one of her art courses, which was one of the best years of my life, actually. Another great year was studying with you, Victor. Gina, my mum lived in Suva for a while, and my grandfather was born in Fiji. And Tusiata has been, I've been a fangirl pretty much for the last 25 years or so, and I had the distinct honour of being the first Samoan to write a review for the Wild Dogs show. And yeah, I think we're all connected.
Nafanua's side, our Whalealupo side.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're probably family. So,
Yeah.
so we're cousins. Somewhere along the way.
So we're from the island of Savaii, and the Whalealupo Tai, the end of the Savaii island, is where my great-grandfather is buried and where my grandma's from on their side, and that's the same village she's from on her Samoan dad's side.
Yeah, and that's also where the name Nafanua comes from, and the figurehead that she is. She's a Samoan warrior goddess, I guess, is the closest way to describe her. And of course, Tusiata's written about Nafanua, and so have I, and so have many others. Yeah, so there's that Whalealupo Nafanua connection as well. Yeah.
Great.
Kia ora.
Gina, do you want to do a connection, Ava?
Hundreds of years ago, all our ancestors came from Taiwan and paddled across the sea using wayfinding celestial navigation. And we all travelled, I think, to Fiji, and then everyone branched off from there. That's my story anyway. So we're all connected, and two women, the story goes that two women from Fiji swam to Samoa and brought the art of tatau to Samoa, so we are connected. And I've been to see Victor's plays, Black Faggot, and another one. Another play of hers, and yeah, we are all connected. All of us. I'm the only Fijian in the group. Everyone else is from Samoa. So,
but that's okay.
That's
Gina.
okay.
That's okay.
We are still cousins.
Okay, Tusiata will share a vast story.
So my father came to New Zealand in that first kind of wave of immigration in the 1950s, 1952. And those were the days after the war, where it was boom time in New Zealand, and the government and all the people reached out to the islands and said, come to the land of milk and ice cream and do the factory jobs that we don't want to do. So my father came. He was one of the first 7 in Christchurch, where I was born. And he'd be about 95 now. And of course, he was instrumental then in bringing a lot of people from his very large extended family, one of them being Victor's father. And our direct link is through my grandmother. My grandmother and was Victor's great aunt. That might sound that is like close as that. That is like brother and sister in the islands. So her name is Tolise, and she is from the village of Avia, which is also in Savaii, the big island. This lovely lady sitting behind me, I came to writing quite late, in my 30s, and I'd been overseas for 10 years. I had no idea what was going on here in New Zealand and the big flowering of Pacific art. My cousin introduced me straight into the arms of the Urale sisters, Makerita and her 2 fabulous sisters, and they were really, really important for me in that beginning of my journey. Yeah, the bars all over the place, eh?
Yeah, and I remember Tusiata writing Wild Dogs Under My Skirt as a poem, and she performed it at Circa Theatre, and it was a one-hander, one piece, and it was really unusual to have a poet in a theatre presenting poetry as a theatrical work. So that was unusual to see that there, and then the journey of that work into a theatre production, which was just stunning, with a full cast premiered at Auckland Festival. Victor was the producer, directed by Annabella, and it went to New York and did amazing well. And I guess the next var is about a month ago I went to Wanaka Festival of Colour, another awesome festival, and saw the production of Savage Colonizer. You might have read that a bit in the paper. We might talk a little bit about that later, eh? But that's some of the VAR. Victor and myself and Tusiata are also alumni of the Fulbright Pacific Writers Residency at the University of Hawaii a long time ago. So from that, I hope that gives you a little bit of a context of who we are. And I Googled Wikipedia, I went Featherston, how many islanders are there? Guess what, 2.8%. And just us being here is probably double. Yay! Choo! Choo! So just some loop back to here, and again, a huge thank you to Peter, Mary, and the Booktown Featherston team for allowing us the space to share with you guys. We're now going to move into sharing some of the writings with starting with Tusiata.
Okay. All right. I don't usually read off a phone, but I'm going to read off a phone. It's a poem which hasn't been printed yet. It's my current favourite poem. And it is, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. So I wrote a poem called The 250th Anniversary of James Cook's Arrival in New Zealand, which is available in my latest book, Savage Colonizer book. Now this book, 3 years after it was published, caught the eye and a great deal of ire from certain politicians and commentators here. And apart from 300 complaints to race relations, there was also a number of complaints to the New Zealand Media Council, from which there was an 8-page report. When I read the report, it was quite interesting to read what the complainants had written. So I thought I would use some of their words in my own poem. So let me just get there and juggle all the things, the poem, the phone and the... Okay, so I'm sorry for those of you who can't see me at the back there, because what I'm going to do is when I read the parts which are straight from the complainants, I'm going to do that so you can see where I'm actually quoting. All right, case 3392. Tusiata Avia can't wait to make you feel uncomfortable. Or I become an evil brown woman poet werewolf. Sorry guys, the thing is, when I wrote a poem about colonisation, I become a werewolf. My views become exactly the same as those expressed in Germany. What I mean is, I'm the whole of Nazism and the entire Second World War. When I wrote a poem about colonisation, sexual and racial violence burst out of me like wolf fur through rents in my smooth brown skin. I start howling at the moon and inciting racial violence all over the place. My daughter locks me in the bathroom and says through the door, "Mum, stop that racist violence," dressed up as art. Because, Mum, poor white people disaffected by the effects of globalism couldn't say those things. My daughter slumps down outside the bathroom door in tears and whispered, "I'm tired of my acceptable ethnicity. We brown people have all the privileges now. We can say anything we like and get away with it." When I write a poem about colonisation under a full moon, I start writing hate speech and incitement to murder, which is exactly the same as the Christchurch massacrists' manifesto justifying the mosque shootings. Exactly the same. Now I'm howling and ripping off my clothes and writing a poem which is inciting violence right through the walls of my house. The neighbours hear me writing a poem about colonisation and they yell, "Stop that race baiting! Our kids are trying to sleep." Later, my white neighbour will come over to my house and say, "Let me explain something to you, Tusiata. Racism is like a scab on your knee, and if you pick it, what will happen? Leave it alone and it will heal. Otherwise, I fear the wound will get infected. And what will happen to me then, huh? What will happen to me?" When I write a poem about colonisation, it turns into a hate crime. Right then and there, it springs up off the page and marches out into the streets like an army of 10,000 colonial soldiers armed with guns. My poem about colonisation steals my neighbour's land and everybody's land. My poem steals 94% of all the land in New Zealand. It steals millions upon millions of acres of land. My poem kidnaps children, puts them in state welfare institutions, abuses them and stops them from speaking their own language. In the space of a few generations, my poem has traumatised the people who originally owned this land, and their language almost disappears. My poem is no accident. My poem does all these things on purpose. My poem has a plan to take over everyone and everything. When I write a poem about colonisation, my moral compass is marginal at best, and the consequences of my poem devastate innocent people all over the country. Look at my poem, causing the radicalisation of people and ruining social cohesion. Oh no, here I go again with my pen and my exercise book, inciting hate speech and dehumanising people. Now I want you to listen closely, because I'm going to tell you something very important. Brown women are so privileged these days. We can get away with anything. If I was a white male, I would be taken apart. That's honestly how simple it is. It's not complex, no land theft, no genocide, no intergenerational trauma, no 2 centuries of white privilege. There is truly nothing more to think about. Damn this poem. It's making my jaw grow long and shaggy, fangs grow from my mouth and my eyes turn red. Here I go on all fours now with my tail growing out from under my skirt like a wild dog. Here I go writing a racist rant about one of history's greatest explorers. How dare I? Don't I know who Captain James Cook was? Someone help me, please. Because when I write a poem about colonisation, it is borderline terrorism. Because when I write a poem about colonisation, it is the same as an ISIS beheading video. Mum! My daughter screams into the street behind me as I bound away. I don't care how hard your upbringing was in Christchurch. It's just not fair that you get freedom of expression. I'm sick to death of us brown-skinned female poets and the generations of privilege we come from. Now the neighbours are out on the street, wringing their hands and shouting, "Our children have access to this poem." But it's too late. I am running with my evil, brown, woman poet, werewolf strength. I am writing a poem which bursts into flames. I am writing a poem which will burn down the whole of New Zealand. I am writing a poem which will destroy the whole of Western civilization.
Stand over there.
Gina will now share some of her writings.
How does this go? Better? Okay, so I'm usually a fiction writer. My first book was a collection of short stories, and my second book, Navero, is a science fiction fantasy. So I'm a science fiction nerd, but I've recently branched out into trying to write some poetry. So I'm going to experiment on you tonight with my poetry. So this one is called Blood Tides. The time a riptide caught me at Muriwai Beach, pulled out to sea with 2 other kids, windmilling our arms, cutting the ocean, too fearful to float on the current and escape out the back. In the slipstream of time, all things exist at once. A tall ship was wrecked in these swells. We are washed ashore with the survivors, staggering onto soft, dry sand. The time I was drunk in a Mercedes or a Bentley, carousing teenagers surfing the Waipiro juggernaut, we crashed into an oak tree planted by colonial settlers on the Tacoma Street off-ramp. In the slipstream of war, soldiers march along Great South Road past oak tree saplings, searching for a Waikato fight, our faces soaked in red and blue squad lights. The time I thought to swim across Waikato River above Hooker Falls, a kaitiaki said, "Don't do it." This awa, strong enough to drag me over a blue and white cascade. Wakatoa emerged from the mist, chanting paddlers beating quiet evasion no army will ever find. Floating pumice gathered around me in still riverside reed pools. The time we drove along Jervois Road, laughing, happy, loud and brown. The cops pulled us over for no reason. None of us were drunk, cutting our angry demands with squinty side-eye in a fiery death stare no-win standoff. The blood tides of our ancestors dragged them away in swift electric currents. We're still here, standing in the backwash. This one is called Elegy for a Curator, and I wrote it for Ron Brownson, who was a curator at Auckland Art Gallery. The sun painting the sea reminds me of you, a dull sheen dancing the waves beneath overcast skies, the same glow you spoke of in hushed wonder, lifting from a shining fine mat dyed with onion skins. Your small chairs, blocks of installed wood, amused us, carved low to the ground, stippled our backs, cubed our skin. The Uber driver's name hangs on a silver chain, dangling from the rear vision mirror, a kitsch arrangement that sings to the sky, a handlebar moustache floating around each corner, swinging in mid-air in a Cheshire cat smile, crafted from flat black plastic, hanging out a business shingle, his name Dylan or Byron, glued plastic gold letters. I take fast photos of the sea out the Uber passenger window, a polished sunshine ocean, your smile, your laugh in mid-air, your quiet comments seep through, your carved cowrie shells exhibited on the steps leading to your door. I remember you every time I cut brown onion skins, piercing their papery casing, delving into their pearly interior, pungent mist drawing water from my eyes. You left this impression with me, the humble onion, as much as a carved cowrie shell, and tears that fall whenever I make food art. I imagine you laughing. I laugh with you, with every disrupted onion skin, a wondrous ocean glow shining through my tears. This is a new poem which I just wrote the other day, so I don't know how it will go. It's called Ngatu and the Weed Eater. My neighbour moans about the noise from the weed eater next door. Ngatu cuts his whole lawn with a weed eater, she says. There should be a law against Pacific Islanders using weed eaters, she says. I choke and say nothing. A lot of different people use weed eaters in the neighbourhood, not just us islanders. The weed eating is annoying, boring into my skull when I'm trying to write poetry. I need silence. psychological silence, and most of all, physical silence, no actual noise silence. The weed eating is a low-level buzz, but I can think through it. The next day there is a grinding machine that is louder than anything I have ever heard before. It sets my teeth on edge. It drowns out any other sound. It's like a gigantic chainsaw sawing down a tree right next to my ear. Where is this unholy chaos coming from? I want to scream into the sky, shut up. The cat sits frightened under the kaffir lime tree as I round the footpath. It's coming from the neighbour's house, the one who said the thing about PIs and weed eaters. A man in green overalls in her yard, stump grinding all the trees she cut down last weekend so she can install decking to cover her entire garden. Grinding and grinding, a pneumatic drill noise so fucking loud I cannot think. All I can do is write this poem of complaint. He grinds and grinds. I wonder what Natu thinks about all this noise. Does he think there should be a law against kaivalangis using stump grinders? This is the trouble with living next door to each other. Noise carries. I wonder what Ngatu thinks. Okay, this is flash fiction, more down my alley, what I usually write. But I was also a lawyer for 27 years, so this is kind of one of my legal poems. Your kid brother, the accused, stands marooned in the dock, hands gripping the bar, beechwood rubbed shiny. You imagine misty, sea-battered headlands, sanded smooth and pocked with caves. Your family is absent, braving the tsunami swamping you all, including the dry drowning victim, your whanaunga. You question why you're here bearing witness in this foggy courtroom, open-mouthed, staring people bob against you. His lawyer dives in, says he is sorry. Spit flies from her lips, adding to the ocean haze. The Crown lawyer crosses her arms, turns away, utters a cascade of evil, hisses her words like sea spray. The judge sums up your kid brother's case, tells him the crimes he's committed, lectures him, digs deep into the paper dune piling up across her bench. I sentence you to 10 years in prison with a 6-year non-parole period. His shoulders drop, his chin sinks towards his heart. All these words suffocate you, fill your ears, nostrils, eyes, mouth, the same way dry sand smothered you when you pitched your 4-year-old body head first into the hole in the sand pit. He played close to you in the sand that day, tipped himself into a shallow dip, performed a wobbly headstand. You copied him, his happy freewheel, but you dug a much deeper hole for yourself. Sand collapsed around you, fell into your nostrils, ears, mouth, eyes. Your arms pinned to your sides, unable to escape, frantic, you choked and kicked. Tiny hands pulled your legs until he dragged you free. You ran into the house, tears tracking your face, grit between your teeth. He turns to you now, lifts his chin as guards lead him from the sand-coloured box. He's dug a deep hole for himself, a chasm. You cannot drag him free. He disappears into the mist. Waves of people carry you out. You let the current take you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Hope you enjoyed that, and we're very proud of Gina because she did her PhD and coined this this term Pacific futurism. So some of you might have been at the sci-fi session earlier today. That's one of the things. So thank you, Gina. Bola, Vinaka. Oh yeah, okay. Everyone say Vinaka. Vinaka. That's Fijian for thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, Nafanua will now share some of her writings.
I'm just going to move this forward a bit because my friends are over there. Hi, friends. I'm going to read 2 poems. The first poem is a bit of an autobiographical poem, and the second one is a bit more lighthearted. And these are poems that, the first one I wrote as part of my master's year at IIML, and I think it's going to be published in Landfall whenever that comes out, and it's called Menu. Breakfast at 9. A mean man delivers me from my fake broken earrings slipped off, and I still have to go get 4 packets of smokes for Auntie from the dairy. So break me fast, beat my tiny armour wearing off on my arm bent back, and I hope the money stays in my pocket with the slip of paper from Auntie's hand, Rothman's 25s. I hope I get her Silal smokes to her, back to the kitchen where she is baking a pie stuffed so full it breaks its own golden brown body, and the gravy sneaks out to burn off until the pie is just pastry and dry meat, almost empty but still looks full. Lunch at 12. He's far from the farm, I think, this kid in my class who has called me a bitch because I slapped him, when really I wish I bit him. Is that what a bitch slap is? Not the slap, but the person who owns the hand and uses it against his pocket-moneyed cheek for squeezing his chubby hands on my butt to check the dough while we were waiting in the tuck shop line. And why am I even in trouble for this? Is it because the force of my slap was more than the force of his grip? But my armour is the thing that clinks across the concrete floor. Drinks at 18. Drown years, then enter the going crowd because they all look full, not awful. So I rub the last fray of armour left tucked in the crook of my elbow skin, and I fake being just like them, but I am not in the right place, and the doorways are so far apart and dark beyond. That baked pie feeling that never gets eaten, just sits inside the oven and keeps being and smelling and tasting like it's meant to, except that it's not doing its job properly. And if anyone ever did want a bite, they would be deep in the pastry before they knew the pie was empty. Mains at 23. When I meet him, something about white and horses and his full set of gently worn armour makes me bake the feeling that I am in need of something that maybe feels like food but is not food but is maybe him. And he has never had this flavour pie before, for his people prefer things that are liquid and proofed, not smoke or dense dough. So he never had to go to the dairy on his own as a kid, not until he owned his own life, because that's how it happens for him. And now he owns a car that can take him somewhere to be alone, except he's not actually alone, not like I do alone. And he has no something, smelling like something he should have but can't taste, like my crust crumbling at his lips. Kia ora. I need to take a breath after that one. Let's all take a breath. And this is for you, Victor, because you love this one. Names and shit. Even before you know all of my names, you ask me to teach you how to say shit in Samoan. So you can, what, offend me in my own language? Stick my mother tongue out at parties just for laughs, eh? Ha ha. You see, before this, I might have given you the story of my name, defined in full, would have told you that its first carrier was goddess come warrior, diplomat come prophetess. But you won't know that now, because you never asked. So I ask myself, Shall I surrender that one shitty syllable for you to spit and slap into submission, coin the term deposit, its rich claim, reward points for your brown card, clout-chasing ass? Yes. In the spirit of my great name, I will teach you that the word for shit is how we say your name in Samoan. Just for laugh's sake. Ha ha.
How's everyone feeling? Are you guys okay? I think we've got about 15 minutes, so we'll keep going with Victor's. Victor will now share a piece.
This one? Oh, no. Thanks, great, thanks. For those of you that can't see, on my sweatshirt it says Monstre pour vie, which means monster for life. Maybe after you hear this, you'll understand why. This is the first half of a short story called Please Check Your Balance. There was no one to fuck. Like literally no one, just a bunch of the usual silver-haired palangis who looked like they all shopped at the same sale at Untouched World. Well, there was that one cute, ethnically ambiguous thing serving drinks at the back of the bookshop. His enormous pecs were threatening to make the buttons of his crisp white shirt pop off at any moment. And Robert imagined the buttons suddenly flying through the air, catching them expertly in the middle of his teeth one by one. But frankly, Robert was tired of hooking up with the hot help. Why couldn't these literary crowds be full of rich and talented people who looked like Jason Momoa or Adi Sarvea and owned holiday homes in Queenstown and Paris? Why did they all have to look like retired science teachers from Lower Hutt? If it wasn't for the free wine and cheese and the fact that he was broke and hungry, Robert wouldn't have even come to the book launch tonight. He didn't even know who the book launch was for, didn't care. All that mattered was that the wine was free till it ran out, ditto for the cheese. Robert cut an enormous chunk of brie under the disdainful eye of the dreadful Palangi bookshop owner who had once accused him of shoplifting. Holding her gaze, he put the brie into his mouth, then slowly chewed it again and again until she looked away in disgust. As Robert began to cut another enormous slice of cheese, he heard an anxious Palangi voice begin to welcome everyone in very uncertain Māori. And then he heard the name of the writer for whom the book launch was for, Sala Faimalo. Robert choked on the cheese. He was at a book launch for Sala Faimalo. Sala Faimalo, that fucking little faux humble motherfucker. The one all the Palangis jizzed over, even though his poetry was Gaia. Robert turned, and sure enough, there was Sala, standing beside the weedy little Palangi MC in a beautifully cut suit jacket, an ear faitanga, and some kick-ass sneakers, his thick black curly locks cascading down his broad shoulders. He looked like success on a stick. He looked like $1 million, motherfucker. For 7 tempestuous years, Sala had been Robert's partner. They'd broken up 5 years and 20 kilograms ago. And Robert had had to sit back and watch Sala's career take off, winning award after fucking award for his dreadful poetry, while Robert couldn't even get arrested as a writer. Looking at Sala now, he found it difficult to remember the time when they had been so much in love that they used to just look at each other and burst into tears. But that was long before Robert realised that underneath Sala's faux humility lurked the soul of a wildly ambitious narcissist with amazing hair. He watched Sala take his place at the microphone to thunderous applause, recognised the humble shit-eating grin he adopted as he looked out at the audience as the performative piece of nonsense that it was. As Robert turned his attention back to the cheese, Sala began to read one of his poems in that insufferable lilt many of his kind employed. The poem was all very va this and va that. Under his breath, Robert muttered, "Fuck you and your fucking va." He loathed the way the word had taken on some sort of mystical meaning. The Balangis, of course, were all jizzing. Robert went up to the hot bartender, held his glass out for a top-up. The waiter shiled smiley. Not till after the reading, sorry. Robert cast a furtive look at the straining buttons on the waiter's shirt, then looked him straight in the eye. "You expect me to listen to that? Sober?" The cute thing stifled a smirk, checked to see his boss wasn't looking, and went to pour Robert another Syrah. But instead, Robert grabbed the whole bottle and moved off, but not without a backwards wink, and not without noticing the waiter blush. The Balangi bookshop owner looked disapprovingly down at Robert over the top of her ridiculously oversized Mr. Magoo glasses. Robert defiantly filled his glass up to the brim, then raised it to her before throwing back a gigantic gulp, followed by a loud, satisfying burp that made several people turn to look in his direction. Whoops, parties. The bottle of wine was empty and the cheese almost entirely finished by the time Sala finally finished his reading. And as the crowd showered Sala with applause, Robert looked up and was horrified to see Sala making a beeline right for him. He was beaming his shit-eating grin as he tossed back his long, curly locks. Robert forced himself to smile. "Hey, Robert, thank you so much for coming." Sala embraced Robert in a hug that seemed to go on for a beat too long. "Congratulations on the book and your award," said Robert. "Which one?" said Sala. Robert knew that Sala knew exactly what he meant, the $50,000 arts grant he'd recently received. It pained Robert to know that he himself didn't have much more than 50 cents in his own bank account right now. "I mean, it's just, really humbling," said Sala. "I feel so blessed." But Robert knew that was a fucking lie. "You look great," said Sala. Robert knew that this was also a fucking lie. Someone had taken a photo of him in profile that morning and posted it on Instagram. He looked like he was pregnant with octuplets. "What are you doing now?" said Sala. "Would you like to come to dinner? A few of us are going for Vietnamese." Sala looked over at a group of elderly white men who all looked like money and terrible conversation. Even though he was tempted by the prospect of free food, Robert knew he could never handle an evening of Sala and his Palangi admirers all night without wanting to stab himself in the eye, or perhaps to stab them in the eye instead. Through the large front window of the bookshop, he noticed a bus pull up to the stop, right outside. "Oh shit, there's my bus," he said. Sala's face fell. "You sure you don't want to come?" "Gotta go, call me." Robert sculled the last of his wine, handed Sala the empty glass, and then sailed past the disapproving book owner with the Mr. Magoo glasses. The cold Wellington night instantly placed its icy fingers around Robert's face and neck. He strode purposefully onto the bus, tagged on with his snapper card, then took the seat right by the door. As other people tagged on, there was a chorus of, "Please check your balance," for all the snapper cards that had under $10 on them. Robert wondered if the driver ever got sick of hearing that voice again and again. "Please check your balance. Please check your balance. Please check your balance." He looked down into the bookshop. Sala, surrounded by lots of adoring Palangi people, caught Robert's eye and waved. Robert looked away as the bus pulled out, which was when he noticed, for the first time, the bus driver's bulging and well-formed calf muscle. Brown, strong, beautiful. Even though the day was brutally cold, the bus driver was wearing shorts and Robert was glad. Robert imagined the story behind the impressive calf muscle. Someone who had always been athletic since childhood games of rugby in Samoa, who worked his way up to rep rugby after moving to New Zealand, who still played socially with the other oldies and who clearly still kept in shape. Like his friend Mila's super muscly father, Paddy, who Robert called Zaddy, much to Mila's disgust. Robert's eyes slowly travelled up from the bus driver's calf to his thigh. Thick, just the way that Robert liked it, straining against the seams of the driver's blue nylon shorts. Further up, Robert appreciated the bus driver's jersey did not bulge at the waist, with any sign of love handles, and his shoulders were pleasingly broad. Every time the driver stopped to let someone off, Robert furtively tried to get more of a look at him in the rearview mirror. He had thick silver hair slicked back, a salt and pepper moustache, neatly trimmed, full, generous lips. Robert imagined kissing the bus driver, then suddenly realised he was the only passenger left on the bus and that appeared to be making a beeline for the top of Mount Vic, nowhere near his actual stop. Robert was about to press the button to get off, but then he wondered if the driver would have a break at the top of Mount Vic before he continued his run. Perhaps if he stayed on the bus, they would have the opportunity to talk. Perhaps they would have the opportunity to do more than that. Malo driver, Robert said. The bus driver, startled, looked at Robert in the rearview mirror. Oi, you Samoan? Ka lo whai. I thought you were a Palangi, he said. Robert smiled. I get that all the time. Thank you.
Well, that was really cool. Thank you for fracturing the bar, Victor. So thank you for that. We've only got about 10 minutes left. I'll just call out this. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask at this stage? Anyone? Okay, we'll just keep going then. I'm just going to pass it over to Tusiata. So you've heard a kind of a range of the different writings they represent, but I'd like to just kind of like go back to, the name of the panel, Pacific Power. And I'm like, do you feel powerful as a Pacific writer? What are some of the things that, I guess, it's a program blurb and it's quite complimentary, but I just wanted to just pass the mic around. We've only got 5 or 10 minutes left to kind of like, how does that title, does it speak truth to you as a Pacific writer and being on this panel?
Do I feel powerful? I do and I don't. Sometimes seeing the fear on my audience's face makes me feel powerful. I've had lots of experiences lately of feeling not powerful. And we were talking before, I've already kind of alluded to this stuff that's gone down with me about the backlash from ACT and other places. So that makes you feel super not powerful because places like super duper conservative places and people get to tell your story, get to frame you in a particular way. In case you don't know, I'm a racist and I want to murder all white men. So that is my current story. So, of course, anyone outside of the people who read literature and people who know my work, that's how they'll know me. They'll know nothing else about me than that. So, in other words, 99.5% of the country So that's a very not powerful feeling, but I've got to say, being with this particular crew, like, this is powerful, you know. And I always do feel powerful when I'm writing, and then when I get the chance to bring my writing straight to you out of my mouth. I don't just like seeing the fear on your faces. I like to see people like really thinking. But yeah, that's it. We've only got 10 minutes, eh? So I won't write a PhD up here. But you all empower me. Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. We've actually got 3 minutes left, so we'll skip along.
I feel powerful when I'm writing as well, and I feel powerful when my writing is published, and then I promptly feel like I have imposter syndrome, that I'm not worthy. So I'm the same. I feel both sides of the coin, but I feel very powerful when I'm sitting by myself writing. And then there's this other aspect of being a writer where you have to come out of your solitude and face the crowd. And I feel powerful with all of us facing you and speaking to you. So thank you for being here and supporting us and listening.
I really like feeling powerful, but I don't always feel powerful. I do echo what Gina and Tusiata were saying in that I feel powerful when we're together. I feel powerful when I feel connected to people. As a writer, writing in solitude, it's probably the only place that I feel like it's the only place I am an individual doing something that's sort of in this bubble of self. You know, because growing up in a Samoan household, you know, there's not many places to, you know, practice that individuality. So I feel powerful when I write because that's one of the few places that I can be alone. I also feel powerful when I write because I feel like on the page I can be as many parts of myself as I want to be, and I feel closer to myself because of that process. Yeah. Kia ora.
1 minute left. Yes. Well, I will say one thing I reflected on today is that a younger version of me would have bristled at an invitation to be part of something called Pasifika Power, because the Pasifika part of me was not a part that I identified with. But since I started that voyage, which I'm still on towards embracing it, it has really given me a power and a connection that in a very real, meaningful way. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And lovely to share the stage with all of you. And you, Tai lava.
Thank you. Time's up. Thank you, panel. So thank you to Booktown Festival. I must say it feels powerful to be among a community of people that we know love books, love writing, and seeing all the faces here. Thank you to everybody from the local Featherston community and the Wairarapa region who are here as well. Thank you for the organisers for giving us this opportunity to actually feel powerful through sharing. One last thing, we're just going to sing this little song just to wrap us up, which is usually sing it kind of in honouring of somebody giving a speech, but I'll just share with you. It's really simple. It's just words of thanks. I did this to Victor Ratatangi, and honestly, he got so mad at me because he picked the song and he sang it all by himself. Anyway, but I can do this so you can join in. Yeah? Should I all do it? Yeah. Ia. Ua fa'a flat. Okay.
Take two.
Oh, take two. Ua whaawhitai, ua whawhitai, ua mali e mata e vaai. E tasi lava oe, e tasi lava oe, I lo'u nei whaamoe moe. That's us. Thank you very much for listening to that. Shout out to Malcolm, my mate Malcolm there. Hey Malcolm. Thank you everybody.